musings of the entertainment industry, of the music business, where it was, where it is, where it's going, why it's different. I don't know what this is yet.
Okay. Are we ready?
Yep.
Okay. So, welcome back. We have in our part 2 segment of music, not music. Today we have Torin Atkinson from the darkest of the Hillside Thickets.
Hello.
Yes. Hello, Torin. How
Nice
are
to
you
be
doing?
here. I'm wonderful.
You are wonderful. And you're a neighbor to our area here,
Yes.
so you could walk here and...
I could and I did.
Normally we have our limousine go down and pick.
Not necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate...
Save you a couple dollars.
Yeah, our budget is kind of maxed out, but we still like to offer that limo service to our VIPs. So we had Warren in, the Torin and Warren.
The combo.
Yeah, it's kind of good to do you guys separately, I think, because now I can sort of catch you guys in conflict without you guys actually...
That's right. You can see if our stories will line up as well.
Yeah, no, that wasn't then. That was, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that we did talk about, which I'm always fascinated with, and I probably asked you guys about 100 times, over the years, was just the fascination with HP Lovecraft and how... I mean, you probably told me this before, so you're going to repeat yourself to me.
Yeah.
And I know that you love to tell the story about how the Thickets got and all that stuff like that. That's not what I'm asking, though. What I'm asking is why HP Lovecraft? Why did that strike a nerve with you at some point?
Well, it seems like usually how it goes with Lovecraft is someone will discover it in their late teens or early 20s, and that was the case with me. And there's something about... For me, there's a whole bunch of different reasons why I like Lovecraft. I was just kind of fascinated with his writing style the first time I read it. It's very it's kind of like Rococo prose. He doesn't really get straight to anything. He kind of moves around and uses very florid language, and it was all new to me. And then the other thing that I liked about it was his kind of sense of nihilism, that mankind is like a speck in the universe. That was something I hadn't really read too much about before. And then number 3, of course, is the monsters. Love monsters. Always have loved monsters since I was a little kid. And Lovecraft's monsters are very they're unique in the literature world, because he was writing in the 1920s especially, and he was like, there's no werewolves, there's no vampires, it's all aliens from other dimensions. That kind of stuff. So that was like, yeah, I can sink my teeth into that.
Yeah, and I mean, there's 2 questions that come to mind. One is, did Lovecraft scare you?
No, it didn't keep me up at night.
Right.
But it was interesting, intellectually. That kind of it's like an intellectual horror. It's not the visceral, gross horror of like limbs being, I mean, that happens too, but he doesn't describe, the midnight stabber or whatever. It's always like you learn too much about the universe and you go insane. That's right. The kind of horror. So that was, it's more like a creepiness and a weird, something new and interesting.
So for the mind to go places the mind shouldn't be going,
yes,
kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Who came before Lovecraft? I mean, maybe for you, but even before Lovecraft.
Like in terms of...
An influence.
An influence? Oh, gosh, I don't know. Edward Gorey. I liked Edward Gorey. I kind of discovered him around the same time, but... and before that, any book with weird monsters was kind of cool. I liked, Dungeons and Dragons, of course. Was before I learned about Lovecraft, and as soon as I learned about Lovecraft, I found out immediately that there was a role-playing game about Lovecraft, so Warren and I and a bunch of other friends started getting into that.
So Dungeons and Dragons opened up the world of role-playing games,
yes,
which then discovered the world of other role-playing games,
yeah,
and H.P. Lovecraft comes connected to that, and then down the rabbit hole of
yes,
H.P. Lovecraft.
Indeed.
leading to at some point some kind of connection to rock and roll.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure Warren told a similar story, but we had friends who were in bands in Chilliwack, and we decided, well, if they can do it, we can do it. But we had no musical training or anything experience-wise, so we just decided to go with the gimmick, and the gimmick naturally would be Lovecraft.
Right.
Because at that time, he was not as well known as he is today.
Not as well known, but also, I mean, did you actually have the idea of like, well, let's do something and we'll base this around Lovecraft? Or I wrote a song and it's based around our favorite idea that we went through, you know, either the game or we read this book and got to know Lovecraft a little bit. So we wrote a song about it. But did you have an idea that, and you know, that we're going to base the entire bend of the band, that like it's going to be Lovecraft or nothing?
That was definitely it. It was going to be, well, I mean, obviously we don't do, all of our songs are not all about Lovecraft stuff, but primarily I would say we're definitely a Lovecraft band. I mean, the name of the band is taken directly from a Lovecraft story. We dress up in monster costumes, many of which are Lovecraft monsters or come from some of his mythos. So yeah, we were let's be a Lovecraft band. Mm-hmm. And then the training came after.
Well, you learn on taking the and this comes up a lot in our you know, in our show where we talk about other people and things that they did, and the whole concept of do it yourself or DIY as a concept comes up over and over again, because it seems that people who create anything or get anything done, oftentimes they sort of take it in their own hands. They may have people who help support them along the way or everything, but you just sort of have to sort of take that ethic or that I'm going to do it myself, including I'm going to learn how to figure out how this 6-stringed instrument or how to make noise and make it, you know, make sense. And you guys sort of take it to another level where, you know, there's a visual part of it as well, where it's not like, you know, you've gone out and purchased those costumes. Although now with the internet and all sorts of things that are out there, it almost seems like I thought of it, I went to Google. Yeah. There's this place that I can order the outfit that is, you know, that was created for this character in a particular.
Yeah, but I would never do that. I think we would get called immediately if we're like, you got those costumes off the internet. We'd never hear the end of it.
Right, but I've seen you guys play a few times, and I look at the costumes, and I'm going like, pretty snazzy tailor job there. Yeah. And then in other cases, it's like, I could do that. I could make a costume like that.
Yes, yeah. Well, there's the famous one we had where we had, for whatever reason, we didn't have our costumes that night, so we just bought a bunch of aluminum foil and went as robots.
Right. Maybe your best gig ever.
I think so.
Yeah. I think you reflected what the audience was feeling that night in such a way.
I get it.
But you guys probably were baked by the end of the show.
Well, our costumes are always very warm, but yes.
Yeah.
Sponsored by Jiffy Pop, I think, was the joke of the night.
Sponsored by Jiffy Pop or Alcan.
Yeah.
So the Thickets have such a long, storied career of, you know, it's almost like for me, I look at it, it's like a mystery cult or something. It sort of emerges from time to time, then it goes completely underground and dormant for a while, and then sort of like, you know, snakes along. It's still alive somehow, and then comes out of the earth, and then it's just like, we're back, we've arrived, and this was always the way it was meant to be, because this was in the prophecy that said we were going to return for our 7th album.
Every 8 years.
Yeah, every 8 years.
The stars will align.
I think maybe it's 8 years between the planning, but it's probably 10 years actually almost between the releases of the new album and everything, which is, you know, I mean, in the time of 10 years, just music business alone, and I would say that you guys work outside and inside the music business in a peculiar way, because I mean, I think you have so many fans out there. If you could get them all together for one gig, you'd be playing a giant arena, and it would be the most awesome show in the world, but they're everywhere, and you never know where they are, right?
That's true.
But I think I forget what I was going to say. It doesn't really matter now. I guess it'll come back to me. I had a point I was leading up to, and then I just sidetracked by trying to be funny or something.
That's the worst.
Yeah. But it doesn't matter. I'll go back to something else that I sort of made a note of that I wanted to talk to you about. And it sort of has nothing to do with the Thickets, but maybe everything to do with the Thickets. So you do other things. You have other, obviously, you're inspired by other things beyond just, contemporary music or rock music or whatever it might be, and certainly beyond Lovecraft. I mean, what are your plans? What inspires you? I got a feeling of what inspired you to sort of help launch the Critics, but what's inspiring you now? What are you involved in at this point? Where is that sort of journey of role-playing games and art and costumes and illustrating and horror and fantasy? Where is that taken you, and where do you want it to take you?
Well, right now I'm kind of on a post-apocalyptic kick. So that's kind of...
Does that have anything to do with the recent U.S. election, or is that...
No,
okay.
I've been on this for a few years now, and just just kind of absorbing that, and in doing a lot of watching a lot of movies and doing role playing and role playing games with a post-apocalyptic background and stuff like that. So playing post-apocalyptic video games and stuff like that. So that's, I wouldn't say that that's a large influence on the music. Again, I think that kind of goes to the Lovecraft nihilism kind of thing, where, everything's bleak and dark, and that's kind of always been fascinating to me. Not just horror, but just, depressing literature and movies and stuff like that is kind of, I've kind of drawn to that for some reason. And so that's kind of, and on my podcast, which I had with some friends for 6 years, which was called Caustic Soda, was always like the dark side of things. We always explored, the gross and the morbid side of life and the topics that we talked about. So that's always been a large influence in whatever art I'm producing, whether it be music or podcasts or drawings.
But you seem like a really optimistic person in terms of the future and things like that, though. Am I wrong about that?
Yeah, I'm not like a broody goth who like obsesses, but it's just kind of like a fun release sort of thing that I put it into my art, and I'm kind of fascinated by it. But I don't feel like we're not as much as I used to when I was a teenager.
Right.
The world is going to end tomorrow.
So, what kind of things, like you're playing those games, but are you working on any other projects, any other creative projects that inspire you? I know that you guys have, or not, I shouldn't say you guys, that's sort of, because I know it's not everybody in the band that feels that way or who does this, but I know that you guys develop, I said it again. I know that you've developed other role-playing games and involved in illustrating games and things like that.
Yeah.
You want to elaborate on that
Sure,
a little bit? Yeah.
I mean, when the band released our album Spaceship Zero in 2000, I think it was, I had been doing artwork for the game industry for probably 10 years before that. And maybe not quite that much, but so I had connections within the gaming industry. So we talked to a person I had a good relationship with, a friend of mine, Chris Pramus, down in Seattle, and we asked them, would you be interested in doing a tie-in role-playing game book to tie in with our album? And the album was like space opera with a bit of Lovecraft flavor to it. And they were like, yeah, we're trying to branch out and do some interesting properties. We're not just about Dungeons and Dragons anymore. So yeah, we'll bankroll that, and so we published that game. It took us about 2 years to get it all wrapped up, and that won an award in the gaming industry, and didn't sell very well, but we were all very proud of it. And so I'm now what I'm doing with that system. It's not the setting, but the game system, the rules. I've actually turned it into a post-apocalyptic role-playing game that I'm trying to develop for probably just as an online PDF with print-on-demand kind of feature. So yeah, it's definitely I'm using that system, but with a different setting.
Sure.
And that's kind of where my attention is focused right now, when I'm not working on music, because the past like year and a half building up to this album that we just released has pretty much taken most of my creative efforts.
The system to build something like that is really the system that takes the time, right? Is it not? Or?
Not necessarily.
I mean, there's just so many like, and I'm not a gamer in the same, not even in close in the same sense, but when I've dabbled even slightly with sort of historic or role-playing games in the past, it's just like, there's just like so many levels of, I usually stop myself going, who came up with this?
Yes.
Like, and how long did it possibly take them to come up with it?
Yeah.
And how much did I buy this for? Because it probably wasn't enough, really, because of what you sort of get out of it, in terms of, it's kind of like you can take it as far as you want to take it, I mean, you can say that about a lot of games that involve, mental powers, let's say. I mean, chess is like that. I mean,
sure.
you
can have a casual game, or you can get really into the minutia of it.
Yeah, and everything you do in life becomes one giant chess game if you just get that into it.
Yeah.
So just that. I mean, I'm thinking like it's just years of.
It is a lot of work, but it's really fun. Like I like both the storytelling aspect and the game mechanics aspect, like the mathematics of it, like how, and game balance and theory and design, and then you take that and you add also kind of the setting, so the post-apocalyptic or Lovecraftian or space opera, whatever you want it to be, and just trying to mash it all together and make it work. Right.
So the story aspect or the narrative aspect is like, once again, now that I think of it, even if you're looking at a historic game, or if you're making something up, or it's just like that is also, it could be, you go as deep as you want to go. And I suppose too, I mean, the gaming world has to be similar, and maybe even was the predecessor for a lot of, we see now in a lot of film, television, it's based on. It has a name. It escapes me for a minute, but it's like the idea of its fictional historic reality or something. Like it's based on something that happened in history, but we're introducing fictional characters, and we're using it as a grounding for where we want to go with our story arc or whatever, and introducing new characters and reshaping history. I mean, we see that all over television and a lot of film projects, so the same could apply, right? I suppose with gaming, you're taking in,
Yeah, I mean, you always want to start somewhere where the audience can relate to. So if you start your story in a weird dimension where everything's alien, then it's probably not going to be. You're not going to have as much as a connection with the people who you're trying to get to play the game. So absolutely, you want to be like something that they know, whether that be a time or a place or a culture.
So in film fantasy world, post-apocalyptic, you're playing these games, but what's taking you? What in the movie world? Can you cite a few things that sort of took you there? It was always through literature and gaming, or do you like movies?
Yes, I like movies.
I know you're
a
big
lot.
animation fan.
Yeah, well, I work in animation. It's my day job.
Right.
But for again, Mad Max, obviously. That's a huge influence. And then there's actually, going back to animation, there's a short that was in Spike and Mike's Film Festival years ago when they toured, and it was called Mutilator. And it was by a guy named Eric something or other. I can't remember his last name right now. Fogel. And he made 2 shorts, and they're very much, they look like, grade 9 duotang, art, and it's very like immature and graphic and ridiculous, and I rediscovered that on YouTube a few years ago, and that's what I want my gaming experience to be like, kind of just weird and just over the top. And then other influences would be like Fallout, the video game, and there's been a whole bunch of post-apocalyptic. It seems to be the past 3 or 4 years have all been. There's like 12 post-apocalyptic movies a year. So
yeah, and The Walking Dead.
Yeah,
is obviously caught America by storm. It's just like it's Are you following all that?
I've watched a few.
Did you jump out?
I'm not that into zombies, strangely
Right.
enough. Yeah, zombies are not really my thing, but I've certainly
It's not quite
watched.
post-apocalyptic, then, is it?
Well, it depends. There's zombie apocalypses and there's like nuclear apocalypses or
Yeah.
biological apocalypses, and so there's all different subcategories.
Sure,
you can
sure.
play with.
Subgenres that you work with, but zombies isn't your thing. And what about science fiction? There's some of the place where you've gone. I mean, science fiction in a more of a spaceships flying in space kind of way. Like I know you guys, as a band, sort of tipped your hat to Star Wars and
Yeah, especially a lot of like our Spaceship Zero role playing game was very much kind of like 1950s, more than anything else. But we're all living in the 90s and the new millennium and everything. So of course it's not going to be exactly that. But that was kind of the inspiration. And I've always been a Star Trek nerd. But that doesn't really. That's like my hobby on the side. That I don't really do any art or creative things that have anything to do with Star Trek. I just really like it.
Right. Well, except that you had artists that you worked with, but I mean. You kind of put yourself into the context of Star Wars with one of your albums.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
Which was, I thought, a great touch.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. Yeah. That was one of our first ones, and that was Cthulhu Strikes Back, which
is
not a very inventive name, but
you can't. Well, I mean, let's talk about the new album.
Sure.
It's you sort of do that again in a different kind of pop culture way, right? In a way that probably. I mean, I don't know if you spent much time. As a Dukes of Hazzard fan,
I don't think any of the band are huge Dukes of Hazzard fan, but the pun
just sort of fell in your lap, right?
Yeah,
had to go there.
Yeah, because Abdul Al-Hazred was a character from one of HP Lovecraft stories, and he's kind of the person who wrote the big book, the Necronomicon, which is the big book of mythology that's in most of Lovecraft stories. And so, yeah, someone came up with the Dukes of Al-Hazred, and it all made us laugh, so that's the winner.
Yeah, and your fans will love it too, because they'll all be chuckling along with you for sure. And
we had our good friend who has been in the band before, Chris Woods, who's like kind of our go-to artist and painter. He's well known, and we had him do the cover art for the album as well, and he did a fantastic job.
And Chris also did Cthulhu.
Yeah, he did Cthulhu Strikes Back, and he did the cover for Spaceship Zero.
Spaceship Zero.
Yeah.
So there's it's kind of like
going back to our roots.
Not only going back to the roots, but there's continuity through all of the releases. But I guess he didn't do Shadow Out of 10.
No.
I
did Shadow Out of 10.
Right, which is also fantastic. But it's just you had to save up your money to get to afford Chris on this one. And so
the Kickstarter helped, or the IndieGoGo.
Yeah, and which is a fantastic way. That's probably one of the things that have changed. That as you guys were, snaking underground, ready to, attack the earth again. Yeah. The way that the music industry has changed so much, and one of the things that, I'm always like the challenge now is like, how do you, if I'm working with artists. It's like, okay, even if there's some sort of sustainable model out there that allows them to be able to perform live and make a few dollars, it's just, where's the money left over to try to piece together a recording session or coming up with the creative pursuits, this sort of the mandate, like, well, we have to make a new record, or we've written some songs, now how do we make them into recordings? And, I mean, just the idea of crowdsourcing. And once again, you guys are built for it. When we talked about it before, it was kind of like, well, we know that there's fans out there. It's just, if we could get them all in one place, and crowdsourcing allows a lot of them to come to one place.
It was much more successful than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah. And I think it bodes well for you guys, because I think that your fans they care, and they really, a good core of them, I think, will probably be interested in almost anything that you guys want to offer, as long as, you keep the typical quality standards. That you don't slough on your ideas and the quality, and that's the other thing too. It's just like, the new record sounds amazing.
Yeah, we're very
and the mastering sounds like amazing. It's like another level, and I think everybody's
get their copy. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they will be if they followed the group. And if they haven't, it will once again lead into a portal into the past, and you'll find your other releases.
So what about that? What about playing at PAX, and what does that mean to you to sort of bring it to people a lot of people that you can relate to, just in terms of maybe their interest in role-playing games and video games as well?
Yeah. The nerd cons, as we call them, always great. And the film festivals as well. That's kind of like, for the past, I would say even 10 years, that's really where we played most. It would be like the Necronomicon and the HP Lovecraft Film Festival, and we've certainly had a history with gaming conventions and stuff like that. And some of them have been hits and some of them have been misses, just in terms of like, some of them are just not great shows for whatever reason, whether it's been, the gear is not there, or we didn't get as many people as we hoped, or whatever. But the people that do come are always like, our people.
Right.
They understand who we are and what we do, and they're not like just wandering in a bar and going, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah. Costumes. What are these? I'm out of here. Like,
yeah, they're always very into it, so we appreciate those shows.
Right.
It's kind of a guaranteed audience for us. And they're gonna want to talk to us and buy the merchandise and all that stuff. So it's great. They give us all the love.
Yeah, and likely, even if they discover you in that situation, they're probably
they're predisposed
with you for a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
The cool thing is that access to those situations and that communication is one thing that must have really changed. I mean, we talk about changes since your last album, but just changes since you guys started. Like, how did you even connect with those audiences in the past? It was just so much snail mail, I guess, reach out.
When we started, the internet was just getting going. It was 1992, and there was just shortly after the BBSs and all the 2400 baud modems and all that kind of stuff. So. But even back then, we were on board with the internet, and we had our little web page and everything. But it was a lot. We were doing physical newsletters back then and mailing them out to people,
right?
And trading zines and all that kind of stuff, and making zines and things of that nature. So yeah, it was. There was not as much connection with the world, that's for sure.
Yeah, you just brought up zines, I don't think about zines in the same way, and all the things that we talked about with the sort of DIY thing, I don't think anybody brought up zines, but actually, podcasts are kind of the new zine in a way.
Kind of, yeah.
Like when you think about it, because if you got a zine, then you were inspired to make a zine.
Yeah.
And you could make a zine about
Anyone
whatever your
do it.
zine was.
Yeah.
Right. And then how did you get your zine out there? Well, you usually started by, hey, you want to trade zines with another zine?
Yep.
And then, and when I got into the whole record business part of it, that's exactly what I did. Yeah. I basically took records that I had and I found other people who were making records in other cities.
Yes.
And instead of saying, do you want to buy these? I go, let's trade.
Yeah.
And then I would actually, some of the records I would go, I'm keeping this.
Yeah.
And then other ones I would go and try to sell them like they were the records I was trying to sell. Because if I went to that record shop and I said, okay, we just put out this record, but if I showed up next week and go, here's some other records that you might want to buy.
Right.
These guys are from New Jersey or something.
Right.
It's like, maybe we'll take one.
Yeah.
It's like, so there was this, I used to call it kind of a trade exchange.
Yeah.
Right. It's just
building that community. Yeah, I remember because
and it could be zines.
After a short while, there was a zine about zines, and it was the master list of zines.
Yeah.
Which ones were still going, which ones were defunct, and
zine list. And then of course if anybody has a copy of this zine in its original, whatever, like any first issue of a record that was made 500 copies or something, that the artist went on to become Black Flag or something. It's like
I don't know what the aftermarket is for zines.
I'm not sure
seen a lot
either.
of them on Amazon.
It's just like if anybody has it, Yeah, I've got it. It's the copy that I made of the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there is. I'm thinking more of the glossy stuff,
Right.
Because some of that, first issue, early. When I was a kid, it was Famous Monsters of Filmland.
Right.
So, Famous Monsters of Filmland took me because I was a monster person, but I was a classic monster person.
Right.
So, those Universal pictures, right through 40s and 50s, those were made before my time, but to me they were, and 30s too, because, the original Frankenstein movies and
Right.
Mummy and Dracula and all
Yep.
that had a big effect. And when I discovered Famous Monsters of Filmland, I was like, it was like somebody was putting out a magazine just for me, right? And it's interesting over the years how many people I'll bump into and I'll sort of go, oh, you're kind of interested in this or that. It might be music. It actually might be rock and roll. It might be something. And they will cite Famous Monsters of Filmland as some sort of reference point.
Right.
And I know that there's other publications, there's other things out there, but it was kind of like those editors, the people who were putting that together. It was Forrest Ackerman was the editor at the
Right.
time, who was a literary agent for science fiction writers,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah, I've
And
heard of his name many
yeah,
times.
yeah, he's actually given credit of coining the term sci-fi.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that's true or not, but I know that a lot of people give him that credit,
Right.
right? As he kind of took the film Metropolis and that was the turning point for
Right.
him as a kid, seeing that
Right.
film.
Yeah.
It's a silent film, and went from there. So it's just interesting how, to me, the sort of a thing that transports a person into the realm of fantasy, et cetera, sort of inspires somebody to sort of pursue the creative avenue, to make the commitment to creative pursuits.
Right.
And I know we haven't talked about it directly, but everybody who sits in that chair when we talk, they all made a commitment to pursue the creative somehow.
Yeah.
At some point, they just, but I'm not going to do this. Or I'm doing this for now, but really what I'm doing, my passions are all down this avenue, And it's sort of, that's a life you sort of commit yourself to, for better or for worse. It's almost like you have no choice in the matter.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, because I was drawing monsters since before I can remember. Like, as soon as I had a crayon, I was drawing monsters.
Yeah.
So it was always like, that's me.
Yeah.
I'm the guy who draws monsters.
And continues to draw monsters. Yeah.
Now I'm drawing cartoons, but there may be monsters in them.
Yeah. I mean, you might be drawing cartoons and you call it your day job, but it's also as a result of your passion
Absolutely.
to,
Oh, yeah.
go down that path. And you call something your day job, it's very closely related to, the things that you would draw that you're passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
And there's every illustrator I know does all sorts of work, or every musician I know potentially does certain kinds of work, and then they end up, not every musician. Some are just happy to work, period. And they don't actually have a creative bend. It's more of a mechanical sort of craft thing that they learn. But
Well, I would say
it's a combination
for the
I guess.
Darkest of the Hillside, I think it's definitely about the art.
Mm-hmm.
We've never gone into this business, as like a business thinking, okay, well, this is gonna be our day job. This
Yeah,
is gonna
actually,
be
I think Lovecraft might even owe you guys at this point. There's, yeah. I mean, I already asked Warren about this, but I think that stuff was written so long ago. I think it's freely accessible at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
kind of
in
like,
the public domain.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think I want to now thank Torrin, our neighbor, Torrin Atkinson, the Darkest of the Hillside Thickets, for coming by and talking to us.
Always a pleasure.
Music, not music. Music, not music. Music, not music. I'm still
Some music.
working. We're working on
Some
it.
not music.
Yeah. It's music or not music. That's what we discuss here. Things that are about music or not necessarily about music. And the new album,
The Dukes of Alhazred.
available on Spotify, iTunes, iMusic, Amazon, the Darkest of the Hillside's website, which is
Thickets.net.
Thickets.net.
That'll just take you to Bandcamp, but yes.
Bandcamp Network. It's all within the next few weeks. It's available now. Get it.
Or else.
Musings of the entertainment industry, of the music business, where it was, where it is, where it's going, why it's different. I don't know what this is yet.
We might even talk about music.